Welcome to episode 15 of the De-Anxious podcast. So, this episode is a little bit different, and I was having a conversation about one of our traffic guys, and he told me that 80% of our buyers of our products and our users are women. And I was like, are we specifically targeting women? And he said, not really, no, we're targeting everybody, but it just happens that 80% of the signups are women. So like, okay, this is interesting. And I was like, it also kind of makes sense, you know? So in this episode, we're going to talk about why women are more often diagnosed, almost twice as likely and twice as much, according to the National Institute of Health, diagnosed with anxiety. Women and also like gay people and trans people are more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety than men. Why is this the case? And there are some stereotypes about this, but we're not going to cover. Actually, we're going to cover some of that stuff, and so we can bust some myth and exactly how it also hurts them, in their lives. So let me go over my notes because I made the notes because I wanted to be prepared for this. So as I've said before, like, is it biology? Is it culture? What's going on, right? Or sometimes it could also be our health system, and the way it is designed. Sometimes it also even works against women, especially when it comes to pain. So men are more likely to receive pain medications than women, so if because I don't know, there's a little bit of stereotype where doctors don't really take women seriously whenever they're saying, hey, I have a lot of pain in my belly right now. There's a lot of pain. But when the man says the same thing, doctors like tend more to men, because I think there's a stereotype that men don't really complain, which is kind of false, but you can see where this is going, right? So again, before I begin, this is not like a medical advice. My lawyers have to have me say this. Okay, so let's talk about why this is the case. So let's go over the data first. So as I've said, according to the National Institute of Health, in just US, last year, 23% of females versus 14% of males were diagnosed with anxiety. So almost twice as much, but not really, kind of like almost 80% more. So, okay, so you know what, I'm bad at math. So 23% of females versus 14% of males. And globally, the survey is even higher for women. And gaps are like different based on like the, gender, like age, region, and income. Like lower income women are less likely to be diagnosed with anxiety for the sole reason they don't really have the money to go to a therapist or the time because they're working to provide, so yeah. And so, bringing this down to the medical thing, there is some research that says that it has something to do with HPA axis sensitivity, things like estrogen, fluctuation. It can modulate your stress circuits, right? Life stages where anxiety can also spike is like premenstrual or pregnancy, postpartum, premenopause, and all that stuff. Prenatal anxiety is so common. Like we have a lot of women who talk about prenatal anxiety. Now of course we don't really give medical advice on like medications they should take, but usually that is the period where women have the most intense anxiety, right? So yeah. By the way, we have another anxiety program at De-Anxious that does not have anything to do with health anxiety. It has more to do with generalized anxiety disorder as well as worry and rumination. But Quick Calm side of business that we have is specifically to do with health anxiety, because that tends to be like super common. So if you need help with a generalized anxiety disorder or anything like that, you can reach out to us at support@deanxious.com and we can recommend you a particular program, or maybe put you in touch with a coach. And a lot of our coaches, almost I would say 75% of them are women. And as I've said before, women are more passionate about anxiety and helping other women get over anxiety because they've been there. They know exactly how it feels, and they want to help everybody, help other women. Okay, so let's move on towards other reasons. Women on average report like more rumination and repetitive negative thinking, which is like kind of like predicts anxiety maintenance. Now, some people, like one of the experts that we have on our panel, for one of the coaches program, said that it has also to do with like women don't really exercise as much as men, but I looked at the research, and we I mean, what little research that was available, and that is not really the case. So exercise definitely helps with anxiety, right? Like it's really going to improve your anxiety. But you have to look at, okay, what is the difference between anxiety between women who exercise and men who exercise, right? Not like, oh, wow, women don't exercise and men don't exercise. Yeah, right. So you have to see that. Women who exercise and men who exercise, if you look at both of them, women tend to have like higher levels of anxiety, just a little bit. There are, I think, social determinants and stress load. Like for example, higher exposure to gender-based discrimination, violence, coercive control. It also increases anxiety. They also tend to suffer more from PTSD effects. And in many countries, women are like dependent on men, and they're afraid they're trapped in terrible marriages, and they're scared what's going to happen to their kid if they got divorced. You can't just go out there and find a good job in their country, right? Not everybody lives in America, so that tends to increase their risks for anxiety. And I mean, of course, everybody's going to be anxious. If you are in their shoes in that country, you're going to be anxious because it makes sense, right? Then there's also like the role they have to play, like have to take care of their kids. There's face a lot of discrimination and economic inequity. It also increases their risks, right? And compounds the risks and makes everything worse. And this is more likely in countries that are not America. In the United States right now, there is still discrimination, but if you go to like some of these liberal cities like New York or Los Angeles or something like that, there isn't as much discrimination as in some of those conservative places, like if you go to Texas or something like that. So there is a difference, right? So again, all these things compounding kind of like increases their risks. And then there's also health system dynamics, and numbers are messy here, but women often seek more anxiety help and earlier than men. So men like only get help when they like, one of those episodes of Sopranos where Tony passed out, and he was like, what happened? And he said, well, you had a panic attack. So he went to see a psychiatrist. Women don't wait that long. Women would be like, yeah, I'm anxious. I need help right now. Right. So, this it might be why their numbers are higher than men, I guess. But it's not really concrete, so as I've said, it's messy. At the same time, serious symptoms in women are sometimes dismissed as just anxiety, right? Delaying medical care, which is one of the reasons why they're also a little bit health anxious, right? Because they're afraid. It's common, so as I've said before, as how like doctors tend to avoid women complaining about pain. That's the same thing here. When women have like some serious symptom about something in the body, often, it's just anxious. Oh, she's on her period or whatever, something like that. This is not good, right? It's not something you'd want. It can also, it's actually medically harmful. So we should listen to women more. And this is one of the reasons why I've created this program, because look, in the United States, even in the United States, I just read yesterday about some woman trying to find a therapist to help her, right? She has nobody in her area available that is like less than 3 or 4 weeks worth of wait, right? And even then, it's like $200 an hour for what she wanted. Versus she would just went to a psychiatrist and she got the medication for this thing. And look, medication is important. It's useful, but it's not going to help you, get rid of your anxiety. It's just going to help you manage the symptom. Your therapy has to go on together with the medication, right? Because therapy takes time. So that is why we started The Anxious. We want to make mental health accessible to everybody, especially women, because they tend to suffer more. They have more caregiving role. They have doctors tend to not listen to them that often, so yeah, there's that. Okay, let's move on. So, outcomes differ from race and ethnicity and wealth, education, and safety, but most studies are, binary gendered, and most studies are also Western. So it kind of explains why we see more anxiety in some of their customers that are non-American, from like Middle East or South Asian or Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. With the exclusion of Japan. I don't know what's going on in Japan. It's kind of weird. That country is weird. Like nothing makes sense. There's also a lot of myth about this. Like, for example, people say, oh, it's just hormones. She's on her period or whatever. And look, hormones matter, but the context and trauma exposure are huge. I know a lot of women I've known in the past, a lot of women who, had the, weird hormones. They had to take medications for that, but their anxieties were not bad. Versus there are women who's just perfectly normal. As I've said, hormones matter, but that's not there's a lot of different things that's going behind. So let's just not blame hormones on anxiety, right? Because that's just too vague, I would say, right? And then also people say, oh, women are just happens to be more anxious because they worry about everything, right? As I've said, this is also a myth. Women often tends to seek more care about themselves. Men underseek the care. So they only wait till the last minute when they're literally passed out or can't breathe. So yeah, that's not really the case, that's just a myth. Women are just not just more anxious. It's they tend to seek more care than men. But that doesn't mean that, okay, so that kind of explains the kind of prevalence that we're seeing, right? But that still doesn't explain why 80% of our users are women, right? That's just crazy. I might as well just, I might actually hire a women CEO for our company. So, I think it's probably going to happen, I'm 90% sure we're going to have a women CEO. And because most of our staff is women anyway. I don't really want to make it like a sexist place where everybody's a woman. But it's just there are some things women understand about women more. That's one of the reasons why some of our programs are designed by women. Dr. Stephanie Chan, So, okay, so what can you take from this? The thing is, yeah, that is true. Women tend to women are not just more anxious than men, but they're tend to diagnosed with anxiety more often than men, right? For the reasons I've mentioned, right? So what you can do, and I know most of you listeners are women, so there's that, but I know there are some men as well, because I've received emails from some of the listeners. But screening at perinatal visits, trauma-informed care, if there is a history of domestic violence or some trauma in the past, it doesn't have to be domestic violence. I know a lot of women in LA, we've talked to had a lot of trauma due to their houses being burned down in the Eden Fire. I worked on a project for Eden Fire. We have a timeline called Eden Fire Timeline, where we kind of documented the whole process of everything went wrong over there. It's available on edenfire.com, by the way, edenfiretimeline.com. Another thing that you can do is just fix your lifestyle, sleep irregularity, just move, right? But as you move, I would say, treadmill is awesome, but forward movement tend to help a lot with anxiety, right? When you move forward, it kind of gives your brain the signal that you're moving and it's going to be all right. It just has something to do with our primitive brain, right? Because movement signals we're running away from a threat, right? So it kind of calms your anxiety, at least temporarily, but it does. And also social connection helps. Now, if you don't have any social connections, or, because I know a lot of people who don't, you can join our community. You can talk to people who've been in, similar position. At theanxious.com, we have a membership where you can talk to women who've been there, and you can share your experience every day, what's going on and all that stuff, and that would help. And lastly, talk to a psychiatrist. I know psychologists are not that easily available, and the ones that are often available, some of them are like pseudoscientists. Some of them are like, there's a lot of wait, or like the results are slow. But if you need help right now, you can talk to a psychiatrist, and he will prescribe you some medication that might help, and you can figure out what works for you by working with him, if you have insurance, right? And lastly, you can reach out to us, support@theanxious.com, or Wayne at theanxious.com, and I will recommend some programs that we might have for you, so that would help, right? Okay, so let's move on to almost the end of the thing, and that is rumination breaker, because a lot of people ruminate a lot, because I know one of the rumination episode we did wasn't super popular. So one of the exercises that I've been teaching a lot lately is, so if you're worried about something, you can delay it for like later, right? That tends to help. So if you're worried about whatever, you can say, okay, look, I know it's a big thing, but I'll take care of it at 7 p.m. from 7 o'clock in the evening to 7:20. That's when I'm going to worry about it. That's when I'll work on this worry, exactly what I can do about this. For now, I need to let it go. All right. And that tends to help a lot, at least for me. Right. And the other thing that you could do is slow nasal breath. And so we'll do this together. Okay. Just 4 slow nasal breath. Fill your diaphragm. Right. And just let your muscle loose, right? And I'm hoping you're not driving right now, but if you're driving, you can skip this one. You can skip the muscle relax part, right? Okay, so slowly breathe in and exhale. All right, so there it is. When you exhale, I recommend holding your breath for 3 seconds. And when you inhale, hold your breath for 3 seconds when your stomach is full of air, and then exhale slowly in a long, sigh. And that tends to reset your body. And when you finish this session, of breathing, listen to 3 sounds you can hear, right? And you can just label them. So I hear the air conditioning, I hear the hum from my computer, I hear my chair creaking. I guess those are the 3 sounds that I can figure out, right? So what this does is that it kind of distracts your mind from whatever you're ruminating about, and it helps. Trust me, it really does, right? So yeah, I wanted to do a Q&A, but I kind of lost the Q questions I wrote somewhere. It's in the diary, and I don't want to, so I'll probably just do it tomorrow. Okay. So look, regardless of gender, like if you're a man or a woman, I highly encourage you to seek care for your anxiety. It's not like, even if it's not like super serious, you can still use our tools at theanxious.com. You can still use Quick Calm for health anxiety. You can still use one of our coaches. You can still, reach out to the community, right? Getting help with your anxiety, trust me, it's kind of important. As I've said before, there's a stoic community for men that's really doing a lot, and I kind of want to bring that energy into the space for women, because I don't see a lot of women over there, and I really want to bring that knowledge and those that wisdom into the spaces of women. So I might work with somebody on this, right? I am working with a philosopher. Not really. Philosopher. She has a doctorate in philosophy, about doing some podcast episodes with me on this. And it's going to be applicable for all the genders, regardless of men or women. All our content is applicable for everybody. But, it's like, it's good. So, right. Okay. So that is it for today's episode. Let me know what you think. In the next episode, what are we going to talk about? Let me look at my diary. Okay. I'm flipping through my diary and I cannot find exactly what we're going to talk about in the next one. Right. Okay. So the next episode is going to be, how do you know that this symptom that you're having is just anxiety, or it's something serious, right? Because many times people have like super high heart rate or chest pain or something like that. Sometimes they just straight up even pass out. How do you know this is anxiety? Or is it like something that you should, go to a doctor about? And it's quite simple, quite easy. So tune in to the next episode to find out exactly, how Dr. Stephanie laid this out for us. And I'll see you there. Thank you for listening. My name is Wayne Harrell. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.